My children were hungry. We'd driven 3 hours to attend a family gathering at my brother's house, and lunch was supposed to be ready when we arrived. Instead, my kids stood quietly near the kitchen while my brother's children opened expensive dessert boxes and helped themselves to food. Then my youngest reached for a napkin and my brother snapped, "Keep your hands off. Your mother should have fed you already." The entire room went silent. My father laughed. My brother smirked. I looked at my children, saw the embarrassment on their faces, and made a decision that changed everything. My name is Emma, and if there's one thing I never tolerate, it's someone making my children feel unwelcome, especially family. I was 33 years old, raising 2 kids on my own after my divorce. Life wasn't always easy, but my children were kind, respectful, and grateful for everything they had. They never demanded attention, never expected special treatment, which is why what happened at my brother Ryan's house hurt so much. Ryan was my older brother. Growing up, he had always been the favorite child. If Ryan made a mistake, there was an excuse. If Ryan succeeded, there was a celebration. And if Ryan behaved badly, everyone pretended not to notice. Our parents had spent years protecting him from consequences. By now, most of the family simply accepted it. A month before everything changed, Ryan announced he was hosting a large family gathering.
Barbecue, games, food.
The usual family event. My kids were excited. They hadn't seen their cousins in months. So on Saturday morning, we drove nearly 3 hours to attend. By the time we arrived, everyone else was already there. The backyard was full of relatives. Children were running around. Music was playing. Everything looked normal. At first. Then I started noticing little things. Ryan's children received special attention from everyone. Special snacks. Special desserts. Special gifts. Meanwhile, my kids quietly stood to the side waiting their turn. I told myself not to overthink it, until lunch was served. Several trays of food were carried outside, along with expensive dessert boxes from a bakery Ryan loved showing off. My children waited patiently,
Just like I taught them.
Then my youngest son noticed a stack of napkins near the dessert table. He stepped forward and reached toward them. Nothing more. Just napkins. Before he could touch one, Ryan's voice cut through the backyard. "Hey!" Everyone turned. My son froze instantly. Ryan pointed toward the table. "Keep your hands off." The entire yard became quiet. My son looked confused. "So, dear sister," Ryan continued, "your mother should have fed you already." A few people laughed nervously. My father shook his head. "Plan better next time." That hurt more than Ryan's comment, because it meant he agreed. I looked at my children. Neither of them said a word, but I could see it on their faces. Embarrassment, confusion, that awful feeling of not belonging. And suddenly, I didn't care about the food anymore. I calmly stood up, picked up our bags, and called my children over. "Mom," my daughter asked quietly, "we're leaving." Ryan rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on." I looked directly at him, then at my father. There won't be a next time. Nobody took me seriously. Most of them looked annoyed, as if I were overreacting. So I took my children, got in the car, and drove home. That night, after my kids were asleep, I opened my phone, reviewed something I hadn't looked at in years, and suddenly understood why my family was about to panic. After we got home, I tucked my kids into bed and sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept replaying the look on my son's face when Ryan snapped at him. The confusion, the embarrassment, the way he immediately pulled his hand back as if he'd done something wrong. That image stayed with me. Around midnight, I opened a folder on my laptop, a folder I hadn't looked at in years. Inside were calendars, schedules, contact lists, account information, and reminders. At first glance, it looked ordinary, but it represented something much bigger. For nearly 7 years, I had been quietly managing countless family responsibilities behind the scenes. Birthday planning, holiday coordination, medical appointment scheduling for my parents, family travel arrangements, emergency contact updates, even keeping track of important documents everyone else constantly misplaced. Nobody asked how much time it took. Nobody thanked me. They simply expected it.
And for years, I allowed that.
Not anymore. The next morning, I began stepping back. Quietly, respectfully. No angry messages. No dramatic speeches. I simply stopped doing work that wasn't mine. I removed myself from shared planning groups, stopped maintaining family schedules, forwarded responsibilities back to the people they belonged to. Then I focused on my own life. For a few days, nothing happened. Or so it seemed. Then the confusion started. My mother called asking about an appointment reminder. I politely explained I wasn't managing those anymore. A cousin texted asking for contact information I normally organized. I suggested reaching out directly. Then holiday planning became a mess. Nobody knew who was bringing what. Nobody knew dates. Nobody knew schedules. Things that had always appeared effortless suddenly became complicated. By the second week, my phone started ringing constantly. My mother, my father, Ryan, relatives. Everyone seemed frustrated. Nobody seemed willing to admit why. The funny thing was, I wasn't refusing to help. I simply wasn't doing everything. There is a difference. One afternoon, Ryan finally called. What is going on with everybody? I almost laughed. For years, he hadn't noticed the work happening around him. Now he was noticing its absence. The calls kept coming. The messages kept arriving. By the end of the month, I had dozens of missed calls. More than I'd received in years. And suddenly, people were asking questions. Who used to organize this?
Who handled that?
Why wasn't it getting done? The answer was obvious. They just hadn't appreciated it before. Then one evening, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said 6 words I never expected to hear. Emma, I think we were wrong. For a moment, I thought I had heard him wrong. My father was not the kind of man who apologized easily. In fact, growing up, I could count his apologies on one hand. Yet there he was, sitting on the other end of the phone, saying the one thing I never expected. Emma, I think we were wrong. I stayed quiet. Not because I wanted to punish him, because I wanted to hear what came next. My father sighed heavily. The house has been chaos. I almost smiled. I wasn't surprised. For years, I had quietly filled the gaps everyone else ignored. The moment I stopped, those gaps became impossible to miss. We didn't realize how much you were doing, he continued. That sentence hit harder than I expected, because it confirmed something I had known for years. Nobody noticed. Not my parents. Not Ryan.
Not most of the family.
They only noticed when it stopped happening. A few days later, my parents asked if we could meet. I agreed. Not for me. For my children. When I arrived, Ryan was already there. He looked uncomfortable. The confident attitude he had worn at the barbecue was gone. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then Ryan looked at me. I owe you an apology. I raised an eyebrow. That alone was a rare event. He took a breath. What I said to the kids was wrong. The room became quiet. My parents nodded. For the first time, nobody tried to defend him. Nobody blamed stress. Nobody made excuses. Ryan continued. I embarrassed them. Yes, I replied. I did.
His voice was softer now.
More honest. I appreciated that. But I needed him to understand something. The problem was never the food. Everyone looked at me. It was respect. I explained how my children felt that day. How they had spent the entire drive home wondering what they had done wrong. How they felt unwelcome around people who were supposed to be family. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father looked away. And Ryan sat silently. Because there was nothing to argue with. It was the truth. A few days later, Ryan apologized directly to my children. Not through me.
To them.
And that mattered. Over time, things slowly improved. Not perfectly, but genuinely. Boundaries became clearer. Respect became expected. And my children learned something important. They learned that protecting your dignity is never an overreaction. Looking back, the food was forgotten within days. The disrespect wasn't. And sometimes the only way people learn your value is when they finally experience your absence.